Apple had a busy week, but you wouldn't know it from the presentation. No keynote, no stage, just a few YouTube videos and a press event in New York. That quiet week might be the most important Mac Apple has launched in years, a budget MacBook. Ever since Apple brought its M-series chips to the iPad, the tech world has had one question. Why not just run macOS on it? For years, Apple insisted the iPad wasn't built for that. And with every iPad OS update, Apple kept adding more desktop-level capabilities. Just enough to make iPad look powerful, but never enough to replace your Mac. Whenever people pushed back on Mac pricing, Apple had one answer: the MacBook Air. Thin, light, and with the M-series silicon, the Air was what most people would ever need as a daily drive. But it was still not as cheap as many had hoped. Apple Silicon gave the Air real performance at a competitive price, but $999 was still a stretch for a lot of people. And when MacBook Air with M2 launched, Apple pushed it even higher to $1,199. In just 1 year, they walked it back to $1,099 with the M3, then down to $999 with the M4. But now the M5 brings it back to $1,099 US. So the demand for a more affordable MacBook never really went away. Then, this week, Apple finally answered the call. They introduced the MacBook Neo. And here's the irony. Apple spent years putting powerful chips in the iPad, but holding back the software. With Neo, they did the opposite. A weaker chip, but the full power of macOS. Let's break down the specs. The Neo comes in two models, both powered by A18 Pro chip, so no M-series silicon here. This is an iPhone chip running a laptop. Both pack 8 gigs of RAM. A 13-inch liquid retina display with 500 nits of peak brightness and either 256 or 512 gigs of storage. The pricier model adds a Touch ID. For ports, you get one USB-C 3, one USB-C 2, and a headphone jack. That's it. It weighs 2.7 pounds, same as a MacBook Air, and runs on a 36.5 watt-hour battery with only 20 watt charging, so no fast charging here. It comes in 4 colors: silver, blush, citrus, and indigo. Kudos to Apple's ever-creative naming team. The 256 gigs model start at $599. The 512 gig model priced at $699. At this price, the Neo hands down the cheapest way to get a Mac. Now, I know what you're thinking. You can grab an iPad for $349. But here's the catch. Slap a keyboard on that and bump it to 256 gigs and you are paying $698. That's actually more than the Neo. And that iPad, it's running on A16 chip, 2 whole generations behind the Neo's A18 Pro. So the real question is, should you buy one? It really comes down to what you really need a laptop for. So before you hit that buy button, ask yourself this: do you need a powerhouse or just a reliable daily driver? If you are someone who does cloud gaming, casual mobile games, web browsing, working in Notion or PowerPoint, taking notes, and the occasional movie night, the MacBook Neo got you covered. But if you are buying a computer for video editing, heavy multitasking, extensive Photoshop, or anything beyond everyday tasks, the MacBook Neo isn't the one. And sure, you might be thinking, can't an iPad handle all that? It can, but here's the thing. You are locked into iPad OS, which doesn't come close to what macOS can do. Plus, no keyboard or trackpad included when you purchase an iPad. Now, if you need a touchscreen or you live and die by handwritten notes, go for an iPad. For anything else, get a MacBook. But does that Mac have to be the Neo? Well, here's the thing. For most people, MacBook Neo is a great deal. But if you're strictly shopping on budget, you can still pick up a MacBook Air with an M2 for similar money, either on discounts or refurbished. An M2 Air gets you Touch ID, 2 Thunderbolt ports, MagSafe, a bigger battery with fast charging, double the RAM at 16 gigs, a backlit keyboard, a battery trackpad, and 4 speakers instead of 2. But if the budget is the bottom line, nothing Apple sells right now can beat the Neo. And with the student discount, it gets even better. $499 for the 256 gigs and $599 for the 512 gig model. So, what's the catch? People generally don't just buy Apple for the specs. They buy it because they trust it's going to last. But with something brand new like Neo, that trust hasn't been earned yet. And there's no telling how long Apple keeps this in the lineup. Remember the 12-inch MacBook from 2015? It was gone by 2019. Demand wasn't there, and honestly, Apple probably just didn't know where to take it. And when you look at the rest of the lineup, a pattern starts to emerge. The MacBook Pro gets a spec bumps every year, and that's about it. The Air hasn't really changed since its 2022 redesign. And instead of innovating, it looks like Apple is shifting its strategy. Put a product in every price bracket and attract as many customers as possible. And the Neo might share the same fate, that 12-inch MacBook. Right now it looks like a win. But as Apple upgrades the specs over time, the price will inch up. And eventually, we are right back where we started. But what if Apple is not going to change the price for Neo? What if there's a different game here? For years, the biggest criticism of Apple has been the price of entry. You want it in, you paid in premium. But Neo changes that narrative completely. For the first time, Apple is offering a cheap ticket into the walled garden. And once you are in, very few people ever leave. Apple knows that, and they're banking on it. A cheap MacBook is your key into Apple's walled garden. But make no mistake, it's also Apple's key to enter your pocket. Time will tell how the MacBook Neo plays out. But it's already done something no Mac has done before. It's part of the conversation about what a budget laptop can be. The MacBook Neo arrives March 11th. Are you grabbing one? Let me know in the comments.